At the age of 86, Gregory Peck was no longer walking red carpets or appearing at glamorous premieres as he once did at the height of his career. Instead, he spent his time with memories that had settled over the years, where each role, each face, and each encounter carried a different meaning than before. In a rare conversation, Peck unexpectedly spoke about the actors he truly admired most, not based on awards, fame, or box office success, but on character and the way they treated others in the high-pressure world of Hollywood. In his view, the greatness of an actor is not only found in the glow of the screen, but is most clearly revealed in everyday moments. How they speak to colleagues, how they behave when the cameras are off, and how they maintain kindness in the midst of fame. From that perspective, Peck named 5 individuals he believed deserved the deepest admiration, not just as stars, but as human beings who left a mark through the way they lived. Among those Gregory Peck admired, Cary Grant was always the most natural starting point. For Peck, Grant was not only a movie star, but living proof that a person could be globally famous while still maintaining a rare sense of simplicity in how they lived. On screen, Cary Grant embodied Hollywood perfection. Elegant, charming, intelligent, and always in control. He had a presence that made audiences believe he was born to stand in front of the camera. But what impressed Gregory Peck even more was the person behind the image of that stardom. In real life, Grant was not loud or eager to showcase his celebrity status. He tended to listen more than speak, and observe more than perform. In their meetings, Peck often noticed that Grant made people feel comfortable, regardless of their role on set or their position in the film industry. It was this simplicity that made Cary Grant so special in Peck's eyes. He did not build a wall of stardom to separate himself from others. Instead, he seemed to reduce that distance by treating everyone as naturally as possible, as if fame had never defined who he was. Gregory Peck once recalled a quote from Cary Grant that he never forgot. "Becoming someone the world admires is far easier than becoming someone you can respect yourself." For Peck, it was not just a sentence, but a philosophy shaped by the experience of a man who had reached the peak of fame. What Peck admired about Grant was not his roles or box office success, but the consistency of his character. In every situation, he remained calm, courteous, and kind, qualities that are not easy to maintain in the highly competitive environment of Hollywood. To Gregory Peck, Cary Grant represented a star who never lost himself, and he was the first name on the list that reminded him that true greatness does not always exist on screen, but in the way a person lives when no one is watching. If Cary Grant represented calmness and sincerity, then Audrey Hepburn, in Gregory Peck's memory, embodied something entirely different. Pure kindness, gentle yet deeply impactful. Peck had the opportunity to work with Audrey Hepburn in the classic film Roman Holiday 1953, and that experience left him with a lasting admiration for her. From her earliest days on set, Audrey impressed not through fame but through her presence, soft, refined, and free from any sense of showmanship expected of a rising star. What Peck remembered most was Audrey's ability to connect with everyone around her. She had a natural way of making people feel important, as if in that moment nothing else existed except the conversation between them. Without effort or performance, her attention always felt genuine and warm. In an industry as competitive as Hollywood, where personal ego often comes first, Audrey Hepburn represented something entirely different. She did not treat fame as something to protect or display, but as an opportunity to spread kindness. Gregory Peck once said he never saw Audrey treat anyone with disrespect, whether they were lead actors or crew members behind the scenes. Even away from set, Audrey maintained the same simplicity in her life. She did not use fame to create distance, but instead worked to close that gap with gentleness and understanding. This led Peck to believe that her true beauty was not only in her appearance or acting ability, but in the way she made others feel valued. For Gregory Peck, Audrey Hepburn was not just a colleague, but the clearest example that kindness does not need to be loud to be powerful. In his list of admired figures, she stood for elegance combined with character, a rare combination in the world of cinema. Among those Gregory Peck admired, Charlton Heston was a special case, not because of glamour or screen charisma, but because of something rarer in Hollywood: absolute consistency of character over many decades. Peck affectionately called him Charlie, more like a friend than a fellow actor in the industry. In Peck's eyes, Heston was not the type of star who sought attention or constantly reshaped his image to fit changing times. He was someone with clear principles who spoke little, but when he did speak, his words always carried certainty and responsibility. On screen, Charlton Heston was associated with epic, larger-than-life roles, strong characters with rigid moral conviction, often placed at the center of grand historical narratives. But in real life, what impressed Peck even more was not that grandeur, but the way Heston never allowed fame or his cinematic image to define who he truly was. Heston held a very clear view of acting and the role of an artist in society. He believed that when an actor appears in public, whether on screen or off it, their words and actions carry a certain weight of influence. Because of this, he was always careful in how he lived, how he spoke, and how he preserved his personal integrity. Gregory Peck once noted that Charlton Heston was one of the few people who was never swept away by Hollywood's constant changes. As the film industry evolved through different eras, and as trends and standards shifted, Heston remained consistent in his manner. Not out of stubbornness, but because he knew exactly who he was and had no desire to become someone else just to be accepted. Another aspect Peck admired was Heston's role within his family. Despite being a major star, Heston never allowed fame to overshadow his responsibilities as a husband and father. He viewed family stability as a foundation more important than any professional success. In their conversations, Peck sensed in Heston a rare seriousness, but not one of coldness or distance. It was the seriousness of a man who understood the value of words, actions, and principles he was unwilling to compromise. To Gregory Peck, Charlton Heston was not only a successful actor, but also a symbol of steadfastness in a constantly changing world. He served as a reminder that the greatest value of a person does not lie in how many admire them, but in whether they remain true to themselves amid the glare of fame. Among all the names Gregory Peck mentioned, David Niven left the strongest impression, not because of screen glamour or influence, but because he was the kind of person who made the world around him feel lighter, simply by being present. If Peck saw Charlton Heston as a symbol of steadfastness, then David Niven represented warmth and humanity in an often harsh film industry. Niven was known as the image of a sophisticated British gentleman, witty, elegant, and seemingly as if he had stepped out of a classic novel. But Gregory Peck repeatedly emphasized that behind that image was not a lifelong performance, but a man who deeply understood sorrow, loss, and the pressures of life in the entertainment world. What Peck remembered most about Niven was his ability to change the atmosphere of any room. When he entered, there was no need for attention or effort. The environment naturally became lighter. Tension, pressure, and distance between people seemed to ease, replaced by comfort and quiet laughter. But that did not mean Niven was simply cheerful all the time. On the contrary, he was highly sensitive to the emotions of others. Gregory Peck once said that Niven had a rare ability. He could tell exactly when someone was not okay, even when they said nothing at all. And more importantly, he did not try to interrogate or probe. He simply stayed present. During difficult times in his friends' lives, Niven did not appear as a rescuer, nor did he offer long explanations or advice. He chose something much simpler. He knocked on the door, sat down, and stayed long enough so that the other person no longer felt alone. That quiet presence often became more powerful than any words. Gregory Peck deeply admired how Niven never turned kindness into a performance. He did not display compassion or turn helping others into part of a public image. Everything felt natural, as if it was instinct rather than a deliberate choice. To Peck, David Niven was a reminder that in a competitive world like Hollywood, kindness does not need to be loud to be meaningful. Sometimes what matters most is not saying the right thing, but showing up at the right time, and staying long enough so that no one has to face hardship alone. When Gregory Peck looked back on his entire career and relationships at the age of 86, what he remembered most was not awards, premieres, or the glare of Hollywood lights. Instead, he remembered people. The individuals who left a mark not through fame, but through the way they lived and treated others. The list of 5 actors Peck admired was not a ranking of acting ability, but a collection of qualities he believed were rare in such a competitive industry. The sincerity of Cary Grant, the kindness of Audrey Hepburn, the steadfastness of Charlton Heston, and the quiet warmth of David Niven. What he realized after decades in the film industry was a simple but profound truth. Audiences may remember an outstanding performance for a few years, but they remember how a person made them feel for a lifetime. For Gregory Peck, greatness was not defined by what was recorded on screen or in awards history, but by the unseen moments. A brief conversation between takes, an act of kindness no one witnessed, or a timely word that helped someone through a difficult moment. That is why, when speaking about those he admired most, Peck did not refer to the biggest stars, but to people he believed lived authentically in a constantly changing world. And perhaps that is also the greatest legacy Gregory Peck wished to leave behind. That true admiration does not come from the spotlight, but from how a person behaves when no one is applauding.